Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me during this week's live Q&A. It's Pete here, ready to answer questions. We always start with these questions that are asked in advance. I'm going to set up the event for next week right now, and it'll be on, let's see, October 2nd at 12 Pacific. So if you do have questions and you can't make it for whatever reason, or you watch this on the replay, or you just have something on your mind, go ahead and drop the question inside this event that's set up for October 2nd. I hope to see you there. So we're going to start today while we're waiting for questions with Spencer's question, and then we will move on from there. So if anybody has questions, if you're watching and something's on your mind, you have something you want me to elaborate on, anything, go ahead and drop it in the comments as we do this. So we're going to start with this question here, and then we will sort of move on from there. And I'm just going to open up my own video here so I make sure I don't miss anything. All right, we're all set. So let's start with Spencer's question here, and then we will move on from there. So his question is this. Let's see if I can copy it. Okay, why is that not working? All right, there we go. Okay, I had a discovery call today, Tuesday, and during this call, a potential client asked about what results I'd gotten from my current retainer client. And the truth is, I don't know where to look for that information. How do I tell what kind of money my copywriting has brought in so I can answer when a potential client asks? I feel like today I said I don't know a lot regarding results and numbers. Is that something I should ask my retainer client and then take his word for it? Is there some place I can gather that information for myself? Do I have access to the accounts of this person? Okay. ClickFunnels Active Campaign. Okay, so for money that you've made, so where do you find your results? I mean, one way is money you've made for your client, and for this, I almost always go by what the client tells you. But if you do have stats, you can also use that, and it's simply because oftentimes you won't have like a total big picture look. But I would just ask the client, right? But I don't even think this is the most important stat to focus on when you're in these conversations. Stuff that it looks like you do have access to, ClickFunnels, Active Campaign, you can look at performance stats like open rates. You can like click-through rates on emails and stuff like that. That would be an Active Campaign stat. Opt-in percentage on a landing page. Conversion rate on a lander or sales page. VSL right through ClickFunnels, that sort of stuff, because it does report out that type of data. That's where I would look. But that being said, and I think this is, I think you can go ahead and just use this information and say, well, a campaign I wrote for my most recent client did this. This was the click-through rate. This sort of thing. This is what it looks like, when I work with someone. And I think performance stats are almost better in a lot of cases than money brought in, because everybody you work with is going to have a different product. Everyone you work with is going to have a different strategy. Everyone is going to have a different system, different ideas. They're different people. Everyone's going to have different money numbers at the end of the day. But the performance stats are good indicators of what you can do, right? So they can take your data, right, and they can picture it happening in their business. So that's what I recommend doing. So hopefully that helps you out, Spencer. If you have access to these two in particular, ClickFunnels and Active Campaign, you should be able to pull a lot of this stuff if you're writing emails or if you're doing landers respectively. As far as money you've made for the client, I usually just go by what the client tells you, but you may be able to see some stats on that yourself. But I actually think these performance stats, when you're in conversations with somebody to get hired, these are often more important. Okay. So what we're going to do now, and I know that's a short answer, so hopefully that's helpful. Let's move on to Erin's question here. She says, all right. Okay. Right. Okay. So Aaron says, I recently accepted. Um, Let me see, just a second here. Okay. So Aaron says, I recently accepted a full-time copywriting position with a pretty big name client. They are now making a shift away from direct response marketing towards brand marketing, and they are insisting on getting rid of anything that, quote, reeks of internet marketing, end quote, and away from the, quote, launch mentality, end quote, towards a focus on long-term results based on soft selling, no scarcity, no hype. Who can I look to as good examples of this type of marketing? Books to read, thought leaders. Who's a good voice on brand marketing? And how can I wow them without using any of the typical internet marketing copy tactics? Okay. All right. Let me see here. So the difference between this is a tough question because I'm not an expert in any means in brand marketing. Like I'm totally not. So when it comes to brand marketing, I mean, you're really there. There's what the client says they're doing, and then there's what they're actually doing, right? And I don't think they're getting away from direct response. I doubt they're getting away from direct response. I think they just want, I doubt that that's what they really want to get away from, like asking people to buy something, right? So that's number one. I don't think they want to get away from asking someone to buy. This is just my gut feeling when a client says this, when they want to say, I want to get rid of anything that, quote, reeks of internet marketing and I want to get away from the launch mentality. So they probably don't actually want to get away from direct response that far, right? Basically, they don't want to get rid of funnels. They, in like the typical way internet marketers talk about funnels in quotes, I've got my hands up in like a funnel thing, like this, funnels, right? Which is like lead magnet to tripwire, right? Like to on and on and on, right? Um, they probably don't actually want to get rid of that stuff. They just want to do it softer and by a different name. And sort of here's what I mean. If you're brand marketing, right? If you're doing brand marketing stuff, at some point along the line, you're probably going to use some sort of tactics, marketing copy tactics, and we might not call them internet marketing copy tactics, but marketing copy tactics in order to convince somebody to buy stuff. The difference is when you're working with a larger brand who has a big advertising budget and is focused on brand marketing, you've taken that entire process of what internet marketers talk about a funnel and you just extrapolated out and exploded it to large scale. So basically, you start with um, brand awareness, right, which might be just making people aware of what's going on. And then you still have a funnel, but the funnel occurs at sort of a large, sort of a like a really big, large scale thing. And it happens often with like specific, I would say, retargeting, right? So you've got brand awareness, then people who engage with your brand, you still retarget, and then you still drive them towards, depending on, I mean, I don't know what market you're in, I don't know what you're selling, but you still try to drive them towards the purchase of something instead of just making them aware of something, right? And so brand awareness can be a lot of things. It can be a Coca-Cola commercial that's played during the Super Bowl, right? It can be like, I'll just give you an example of a hot trend right now, that like things that I just read about the other day. So um, apparently, I just read this yesterday. Apparently, there is a system that's in place right now, and this is totally cool from a retargeting standpoint, right? And this is what I mean by like they probably like okay, selling a software program. And what I'm about to say is what I mean by they probably still want to use some of these marketing tactics that they think are sleazy, right? Like they, like so we think all right, we're going to like this is internet marketer think we're going to drive people through our funnel, we're going to send them to our opt-in page, anybody who doesn't opt in but they click on the thing, we're going to retarget them, blah blah blah, right? Like all that stuff we think is nasty and they want to get away from. Well, I was reading about this thing yesterday where apparently during commercials they've developed a tone, right? So like say you've downloaded the Target app to your phone, right? Target, like the store Target, like the, the store that's got all the stuff, groceries, commodities, whatever. They can play when there's a Target commercial on TV, a tone that you can't hear, but the app on your phone can hear. And Target in the app knows that you've just watched their commercial on TV. So that Target now knows that you've consumed their commercial, so you've entered a next stage of awareness so that they can retarget you on the next stage of their big, what we would call funnel, right? So from a big brand perspective, they're doing the same thing, right? There are light bulbs that you can put in your store, light fixtures that you can put in your store, at the mall, in a Target store, whatever. And if you've got the app on your phone, they can tell when you visited the store. You don't have to have the location on your phone enabled. You've given the app permission to do it, right? So businesses are using these, and I would call that like I would call that internet marketer, like those are modern tactics, right? So businesses are still using it, right? What I think they want to, and then the language I think they're doing, right? Like the language I think they're using, a lot of the times it's not that it's that's where the difference is. It's just in the language. So I think like what they really want to do is they want to get rid of long form sales letters. They want to get rid of like driving people through these hyped up processes where it's like, oh, buy this for a limited time, limited time, limited time, right? And they want to move towards more of an awareness thing. Anyway, those are just my thoughts on it. Like so the things to read would be, I mean, it's the same stuff, I think, like a lot of the classic like scientific advertising, like Ogilvy on advertising, stuff like that. Like the classic stuff is what brand oriented advertisers have been using for quite some time now. And all the same rules apply, like prospect awareness, right? And market awareness, like stages of market awareness, right? And things like that. Like, are people problem aware? Are they solution aware, right? When you're writing this copy, you're still generally speaking to problems and solutions. It's just the tone and nature of it, in my mind, that changes, and the way you call people to action that changes. Now, this is my perspective on it, right? I'm not a brand advertiser because I think for the clients that I work with, there is a branding effect at a certain level. But for a lot of the clients I work with, it's just a waste of time, right? Simply because of the amount of money that has to be spent in order to develop the required brand awareness to do it. Now, so, but that said, like you said, dude, that Target thing is crazy. Yeah. So like, that's something that exists, that brand oriented businesses are using to micro target people, right? Like, so I think a lot of it, you know, um, basically what you're doing is you're just taking taking it and making it bigger. Now, who would I listen to on this? The first person, honestly, I would probably go to is Dan Kennedy, and he probably has a no BS book on brand marketing. I would probably read that, but I'm no expert in brand marketing. One person I would talk to who's in this group is I would talk to John Robb, because I'm pretty sure John worked for agencies, and I bet if you talk to him and you said, what's the secret that agencies use to create brand oriented campaigns for their clients, I'm pretty sure he would tell you that they just sit in a room and they come up with something that sounds clever so that they can impress their client to spend more money. And they're not really thinking about all of the little minute intricacies of, is it going to work or not? They're just like, what catchy thing can we come up with that's going to drop this idea in people's head and make it sure it's not going to go away for a while, right? That's kind of the shift that you're going towards. But that said, in the modern environment, I think we're moving to this sort of wide, people use brand awareness to drive them in, and then focusing on retargeting, you can then implement some of these direct response tactics, but you don't call them those to your client. You don't tell your client that you're using those. You call them targeted awareness or something like that, or like targeted content or something, so that you can sort of grab people with the big brand and get that catchy thing in their head, right? And then you narrow it down, and then you deliver content just to the people that engaged at a brand level, and then you deliver appeal to go check out the product, right? Get a demo if it's a software thing to people who have consumed the content, right? So you're still building a funnel. It's just you're not doing it in the internet marketing way of sign into my, like opt into my list and all this stuff. And that's not to say you wouldn't have an email list either, right? So that's my perspective on it. And I know you got some follow-ups here. So this client has the money to build that awareness. My challenge is to set the tone, like soft, no hype tone. Yeah, I think what you do is you do content-focused stuff, right? And you basically, you go from a content perspective. That's how I would do it. But that's and that's what, like, you build the awareness based on the content. The people who engage with the content are those who you retarget, right? With more specific stuff focused just on the product. So that's where if they're going to do brand stuff, that's where I would place my focus, right? So, I don't know how much more I can help you on that, but that's my perspective on it. And I know that we have people in this group, like I just said, John Robb, because I know he's one of them. He worked I think he worked for an agency doing, like brand awareness campaigns. And I bet he'd have some perspective into what goes into their mind when they create those campaigns. But from a strategy perspective, I think, Aaron, you're still using like what we would call a sales funnel, using internet marketing copy tactics. You've just blown it up to the level where you are advertising to a broader audience, a concept. You see people who take that concept and say, oh, that's cool, and react to it, click on it, whatever the case may be. And then you retarget them with content that's sort of, making them even more aware of what's going on with your business, right? You're getting them to consume stuff, right? And then those who consume the most of the stuff, you're presenting them with the product, right? And if it's a software product, selling a software platform, I think what you're trying to do the most is probably get them on a demo of it, right? And then once they sign up for the demo, depending on the cost of the software product, it probably goes to a sales team, right? Which is going to do all of the, typical internet marketing copy tactics, but they're going to do it person to person. So I'm going to move on to it looks like we have a ton of questions. So I'm just going to move on to the next one. I hope that helps, Aaron. I'm not a brand copywriting expert, but if I found myself in your position, that's probably the strategy that I would take. Hopefully that's helpful. Who to listen to? I would probably just go see if Dan Kennedy has a no BS book on brand copy, and I would start there, and he might reference some people to listen to, but also all those people from the 60s, right? Like Ogilvy, and those guys like Ogilvy on advertising. Like, go read that book, and then check out. I mean, the biggest thing is to check out what competitors are doing and the strategy that it looks like they're using. That said, my last comment on this is I think there's a lot of room